Everybody knows that openings are incredibly important. So, what makes an amazing or memorable opening to a film? Well, here I'm not looking at the first act, and I'm not looking at just the titles. Rather, I'm looking at the first few minutes of a film, whether that includes titles or not. The opening of a movie, I think, isn't defined by time. Something like Once Upon a Time in the West has an opening sequence of something like 13 minutes. Soylent Green's opening is just over 2. More about both of those movies later. What I'm saying is I'm examining the first scene, but scene is too broad of a word. I say this because Soylent Green's opening is a montage, and sometimes the titles of a movie are on their own, they're not overlaid. That's not a scene. So before we take a look at what makes a good intro, let's briefly look at what makes openings bad. And to do that, we'll look at what is often called one of the worst films ever made. And unbelievably, that isn't hyperbole. Manos, the Hands of Fate. Or to give it its fully English title, Hands, the Hands of Fate.
We should be pretty close right now. The agent said it was about 12 miles from Highway 10, and that was Highway 10 back there.
But you know we should have asked for better directions at the last gas station.
Listen, I've never gotten us lost before.
Mommy, I'm cold.
Well, obviously, a lot of the problems in the opening are technical, and not just in the opening. The dubbing is really bad. I get a sense that this isn't a very good copy, but probably it isn't that bad of a copy. The dialogue is like a parody, and the music feels like false advertisement once you realise that this isn't pornography. Manos is perhaps a perfect example of a film opening that gets everything wrong. There's no building of tension or tone. The music isn't evocative of anything. There's no mood, and nothing happens other than a family drives around looking for a hotel. And there's a shot of a random couple making out. One thing Manos doesn't do, and it doesn't do it because it doesn't have a very developed story anyway, is layer on loads of exposition. Manos is an extreme example, but there are lots of good movies that hit you over the head with way too much exposition in the first 5 minutes. Often it's exposition that isn't needed at all, and this is more prevalent in sci-fi and fantasy than in other genres because they need, or they feel they need, to give their lore or to set out some sort of context. A tiny example of this might be in political or spy thrillers, when you have lots of shots of DC landmarks and then a control room bustling with people and not very well lit, lots of screens and things like that, and the words come up on the bottom, NSA Division 6, blah blah blah. I always feel that I can tell it's the NSA or something like that, and if it's important that it's Division 6, that'll come up anyway. That's really just a nitpick, and the cousin of doing this at the very beginning of movies is a preamble. Don't get me wrong, I like Blade Runner, and I don't think this hurts the movie. I just consider this preamble to be unnecessary, like the part about there being a bloody mutiny. This could easily be mentioned in another part of the film, or if at all. Or it could be in the background or something like that. Show me, don't tell me, sort of thing. Blade Runner is a better example. It's moody, you've got the Vangelis music, and I much prefer that sort of opening crawl to a far too active voiceover.
Skin jobs. That's what Bryant called replicants.
Oh. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, has a crawl that explains about quite dry subjects, then leads into two people talking about trade negotiations.
How do you think this trade viceroy will deal with the Chancellor's demands?
Admittedly, that doesn't last long, but I kind of feel that the movie could have done with one or the other, not both. But if you want to look at how to do a preamble really well, Star Wars A New Hope is great. You've got a very simple story told in a stylish and now very iconic way. An empire versus rebellion. A princess in trouble. Immediately with that opening crawl, you're geared up and you understand what's going on. And then you've got this. This has to be one of the best introductions to a character. The whole opening tells us what we need to know. A small ship being chased by a giant ship, and then Darth Vader stepping over bodies like a speedwalker on a mission. Of course, you don't necessarily need to use any words for a bit of exposition in your opening introduction. Case in point, Soylent Green, which is all about overpopulation. I can't show you the whole thing, but it brings you up to speed with the relevant points of the universe where it's set. New York, 2022. Population, 40 million. There's still time. You know, as a little aside, I briefly worked for a director who was trying to raise a $6 million budget for a small medium sci-fi film where it was really important that the universe was set up at the very beginning, however that may be done through a preamble or through something else. And I showed him the beginning of Soylent Green as a suggestion of how to do it, and he said it was one of the worst openings he'd ever seen. I like it. I think it very stylishly and simply not only tells the audience what's happened previous to the film's story, it builds up a lot of atmosphere. I think that is what makes some openings to films truly great. The emotional impact that they have, the atmosphere that they build, the world that they establish. Like Soylent Green in that it uses montage of past events to fill us in, is Up. Up tells us of the lives and marriage of Carl and Ellie with more emotional resonance in 5 minutes than many film series do with 3 full films. We go from not knowing who Carl is to knowing his entire backstory and a good deal of his personality. And the filmmakers don't need to write it down, they give us this important backstory exposition and make it a joy to watch. Of course, an intro doesn't have to have any exposition at all. A Fistful of Dollars opening is its credit sequence not overlaid on images from the film, but animation set to Ennio Morricone's incredible music. It's nothing to do with the film, but it builds atmosphere. A more modern example might be Gaspar Noé's Enter the Void. Seizure warning. Seriously. Both films use music over their intro titles very deliberately to create tone. It's not as if they were just messing around with the credits, they're there because of artistic reasons. A Clockwork Orange does have a little bit of voiceover at the beginning, but it's iconic because of its music, its mise-en-scène, and its camera movement. Instantly, the director, Stanley Kubrick, creates atmosphere and asserts his directorial mark. That backwards tracking shot, simple as it is, helps to create tone and meaning. The feelings of dread created by the opening of Come and See are perhaps unmatched, and a lot of that is down to its sound design. The beginning of Once Upon a Time in the West is an incredible movie opening. It's like we're watching the middle of the movie. These characters could be at the end of their own epic western. Instead, they're introduced and then dispatched. Even though the beginning of Once Upon a Time in the West is obviously building up tone and atmosphere, it also masterfully lays on the tension. A more action-packed example of a film's opening, which feels like a tense midpoint, is the beginning of The Revenant.
They want us out in the open. No, nobody move! Just stay where you are! Yeah, they want the pelts.
That scene alone took a month of rehearsals, but action isn't necessary to make an introduction compelling. Here are a few seconds from Ran. I've heard some people say that they don't like the first 10 minutes of Ran because it's too slow, but again, in my opinion, this raises the tension. It's the quiet before the storm, as well as the emotional resonance and that wow factor in something like The Revenant or something like WALL-E. For an intro to be great, it has to be unique. Like this.
So you're astrologers, are you? Well, what is he then? What star sign is he?
Capricorn.
Capricorn, eh? What are they like?
He is the Son of God, our Messiah, King of the Jews.
That's Capricorn, is it?
Which of course is followed by one of the most memorable title sequences of all time. Brian. I think the opening of a movie is perhaps where a director can be the most creative, because for the first few minutes, You don't necessarily have to get right into the story. You can have an animation if you want, or you can make an ancillary character look like they're going to be more important than they are. What makes an opening great, I think, is just its ability to connect with its audience, to be unique enough to be memorable, but at the same time congruent enough tonally with the rest of the film, so it doesn't seem to be an art project stuck at the front. I guess, of course, for something to be amazing, it doesn't actually have to be good. Well, on that amazing opening, we leave this topic. There are thousands of great openings out there, and I'd love to know which one is your favourite. So before we go, guys, I wanted to ask you about the lava lamp. I know some people like the lava lamp, some people don't like it, some people say it's distracting, which I can understand. I originally used the lava lamp as a joke, and I kept it in because I thought maybe people would want to watch something that isn't my face when I'm on screen. I don't know. So in the spirit of deferred responsibility, you can vote on whether the lava lamp stays or not by clicking on the button up here. Now, let me level with you. I have a very small set which I've built, and the reason I've built is purely for sound reduction purposes, but it's really small. I don't know if you can see that. And one day I want to build a bigger set and use different angles and things like that. And when I do that, I didn't envision that the lava lamp would be part of the set, or if it is part of the set, it would be in the background somewhere and take up a really small amount of the screen. It's not going to be on my desk or anything. So the lava lamp is going to go one day anyway. The question is do you want it to go now? The next video I'm going to do is about Die Hard. It'll be up sometime next week. Vote before then, and I'll do whatever the vote says, unless I get like under 10 votes or something. Or the consensus is that the lava lamp stays and I go. But it isn't even real lava. Thank you very much for joining me. Next time, like I said, I'll be looking at the Die Hard films and how they've changed, with or without the lava lamp. See you then, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!